Hello everyone, how are you? Yeah, it's starting to go a bit colder here. Well, it's sort of November now, isn't it? So, anyway, yeah, what I wanted to talk about tonight was a problem that many of us are going to encounter. In fact, I think all of us are going to encounter at some point in our playing. I won't say playing career, but you know, during the time that you're actually playing. I think everybody encounters this issue of outgrowing your influences. Um, Now, what do I mean by that? Well, basically, what I mean is that the more you immerse yourself in music and in the guitar, obviously, the more you're going to learn. And unless like the sort of players that you're influenced by are completely rounded and will cover every particular facet, then there's going to be some things about those players which you're going to think, well, actually, I don't really rate that anymore. Basically, I mean, in some ways, it's actually, I mean, this might be controversial, but I think sometimes if you're limited to perhaps two or three players, it can be holding you back because you're not actually giving yourself. You're almost like you're paying lip service to this image, this idealized person, rather than just finding yourself. However, it's taking those steps and copying your influences first of all, which will actually get you there. I think, am I making sense, or is this starting to sound a bit confusing? Starting out, when I first started playing, my influences were Queen, more the band, not just Brian. But I mean, obviously Brian made, was a big influence there. But like all of Queen. And my brother was bringing home some sort of Rainbow and Deep Purple records, but to be honest, I was more into the like Rainbow. When Dio was in the group, I was more into that. I was more into like the actual song structure, and how this, like the song lyrics and the musicianship, how that all seemed to work together. And of course, like the showmanship of of the players, etc., etc. Bits of Gary Moore and bits of Pink Floyd, I suppose, Led Zeppelin. The first Led Zeppelin album, to me, that's my favourite Led Zeppelin album. And other things like Eric Clapton as well. I mean, and I've grown up with like with the Beatles and whatnot. But I mean, I've done a couple of videos, on similar topics before. But I did one about why I nearly stopped playing because I saw Gary Moore playing live, and I just wasn't into it. It was like there seemed to be like a difference between my image of what he should sound like and what he actually sounded like. So that's kind of like one step. And then of course I did that other video about going to see Queen at Nebworth. Excuse me, got a bit of indigestion. Yeah, so seeing that video about Queen at Nebworth. But in some ways, I mean that sort of changed my outlook because I mean, it was a great concert and everything. But it was just showing like a lot of the excesses of rock and roll, and not the actual the actual intimacies of just just playing some sort of simple chord. I mean, little subtleties like that. You know, going you know, I was also starting to, you know, like, go out and, you know, quite often, we used to live in the northwest. We used to go to this little pub in Bollington, and there was a jazz band. We'd always play on there on a Monday, and you know, so you get that sort of, you know. You know, seeing a band in a small setting compared to like on a, you know, on a great big stadium, or you know, on a great big stage like in Nebworth, it was kind of like I was feeling there was some sort of connection wasn't there. So that was one. That was another thing. Also, because like my brother had been away at university, you know, when he came back, he was bringing home other things. You know, like. He brought this. It's a record by Bill Bruford. It was actually like a compilation. It's called Bill Bruford Masterstrokes, and it was basically it was a compilation album of those you know, those things he did with as Bruford, you know, with Alan Holdsworth on guitar and Jeff Berlin on bass and himself on drums. And I was starting to become like a Holdsworth freak. I was thinking, wow, this is you know, this is amazing. And then, you know, finding out more about, you know, like Alan Holdsworth, you know, like, you know, before he was using the Synthax, you know, he's getting like lots of tones, perhaps from just like having like a single bridge pickup on his guitar. And he was playing like strange sort of jazz scales and stuff. And of course, at the time I didn't have enough theory to cover that. But you know, there was also, you know, before that, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe you need to be learning acoustic guitar as well, and you know, but from listening to, you know, like what Alan Holdsworth was doing, I was sort of realising it was more about, you know, like you know, like I say, like a bridge pickup guitar, overdriven amp, so like a Marshall or a Boogie or something like that, and kind of like deliberately putting limits on yourself so that it's all in your fingers or in the volume pot, and of course, you know, like quality of the gear and stuff, of course that helps, and it does help if you are Alan Holdsworth. But so that was that, and then I forget. Well, there's a kind of argument between me and my brother as to which one of us discovered level 42 first. You see, I think it was before the Nebworth, you know, Queen played Nebworth. The year before, Deep Purple played Nebworth. But I think it was U2. They were on at the Milton Keynes Bowl on the same day. And I was listening to the radio. You know, my brother went to the U2 concert, and then some friends of my brother's went to the Deep Purple concert at Nebworth. But I was listening to the radio, and part way through there was an interview with Mark King. And they were playing level 42, and I thought, well, this is really different, you know, because it was kind of like, yeah, because I mean, I was sort of listening to like, you know, like getting into like the Police as well, you know, around the time of, you know, like the Synchronicity album and whatnot, and I was really getting into, you know, into that style of music, you know, like, you know, it's like sort of rocking drums, but with sort of you know, like fusiony style guitar, or reggae style guitar in the case of the Police, or, you know, or just mixing up different styles, you know, this thing called jazz funk fusion, whatever that means. So that was part of it. So yeah, so but then it was really, I mean, I went away to study what was originally supposed to be Leicester. It was Leicester Polytechnic, but just before Christmas it had actually been uprated to a university. It still didn't change. It didn't quite change its name to De Montfort University yet, but it had been given this university status. So that's part of it as well, because, you know, there'd been there's the whole pressure about, oh, you need to go to a university, not a polytechnic, and, you know, blah 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 blah. But of course I ended up at Leicester because that seems, you know, that I like that one the best of all the interviews I've been to and whatnot. I'm trying to stay on track here. But it was during that time, you know, you're away from home, and of course you don't know what to expect. You know, you're away from home, and of course, you know, I've grown up with, you know, obviously like, you know, bands like Queen. So you're thinking, oh, maybe maybe university, or maybe at Leicester Polytechnic, I'll meet some musicians, we'll form a band, and we'll change the world. Yeah, right. Or, you know, I was very into things like Monty Python, or those alternative comedians, you know, like the Young Ones and Ben Elton and that lot. And I was thinking, oh well, maybe I'll meet people there, and I'll join like a comedy group, and we'll change the world that way, and we'll do. But of course, the actual reality of it was nothing like that. You know, I mean, the thing is though, there were, you know, I did get to know a few musicians, and mostly like guitar players, but they were coming at it from different angles than I had, and that was the great thing about it, because, you know, we could just go around to somebody's house, and we'd just talk about music, and, you know, like plug the guitars in, and then sort of, you know, just show each other, oh, do you know this one, or, you know, and then maybe like sort of play records and stuff. And there was a friend of mine, Dale. He was on my course, and he was a big Metallica fan, but he was also a big Ozzy Osbourne fan, and he was playing like Randy Rhoads stuff, and of course, you know, I mean, I'd heard, you know, things like Crazy Train and whatnot before, but I never really. Before then, I never really got sort of Randy's style, and then I started to pick up on that, you know, a lot more. And of course, then, you know, because it was like the late 80s, early 90s-ish, there was all those Shrapnel records were coming out, you know, those Mike Varney things. So, and alongside those, there was those Hot Licks and REH videos were coming out. So, so the first few I picked up were those Vinnie Moore tuition videos, and again I'd heard nothing like this before, you know. It was sort of neoclassical, but it was sort of like mixing up bits of like Alan Holdsworth and Al Di Meola, but with Van Halen and some other things in there as well, and so I started to get drawn into that side of it, and I never actually got a copy, but I know it was quite an influential record. It was a Joey Tafola, the Out of the Sun, because it had this, because like the album cover, it shows this, looks like a lunar lander landing on this sort of alien base, and I was really into science fiction and stuff when I was younger. Well, still am actually, but so it was, it was a really exciting time, because there was all these instrumental guitar records were coming out, and then of course, you know, like guitarist and guitar player, they were starting to pick on, weren't they? And then of course people like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, they were starting to come through as well. But that's a slight bias though, because there was other things going, because I was studying at the weekends. There'd be like discos on at the student union. This is the old student union. They've demolished it now, and they put another one up, which is, to be honest, it's not quite as good as that old shed that they had. But I remember it was, I think it was in the second year of my electronics degree. It was on Friday night was like the alternative night. And then Saturday night was supposedly like the main night, where they play like more sort of chart stuff. But the thing was that like all this alternative music was starting to take off. All the indie bands, all the shoegaze stuff, even though it wasn't perhaps called shoegaze at the time. And all these underground things that you perhaps never heard of. And it was that was all on the Friday. So what you found was that more people were going to the Friday night do, and hardly anybody was going on to the Saturday night disco. So that was just crazy. And then of course, you know, like the fashions are starting to come in, you know, like the people, you know, again, people are starting to discover themselves for the first time. So they're wearing sort of more sort of alternative type clothes. Everybody's away from home, so you know it's easy to talk. It was easier to talk to girls as well. You know, so you're getting approached by girls for the first time. You know, since being back at school and whatnot. And so all these different influences were starting to come together. It wasn't just, you know, all the you know, these big head sort of shredders who were on Mike Varney's label. But then the thing was though that you know, in the, when was it? The whole grunge thing happened. You know, so it was all those Seattle bands were coming up, and those big haired lot. You know, that, you know, the really big permed hair and the trick paint guitars and whatnot. It was starting to look a bit jaded, a bit dated. And there was you know, there was more of these, you know, like these Seattle bands were coming through, and then the whole Manchester thing, you know, like with the Manchester indie stuff. You know, that was coming through more as well. So we're getting tail end, you know, like the tail end of this, you know, bands like the Smiths. But Johnny Marr, you know, he was sort of he was working with various groups, and he was doing that Modest Mouse project. I think that's when that was. So he was doing things like that. So then you're starting to get into, you know, like some of that post rock starting to creep in as well. So then you sort of like, you're trying to marry all that sort of post rock with that sort of big permed hair stuff. And so it's actually sort of quite a creative time. And then let's see. Yeah, to be honest, like after the grunge and that, the indie stuff started to die down, it was getting more into like house music and stuff. So a lot of the guitar stuff was actually, you know, sort of waning. And a lot of that house and trance stuff was starting to come through. And then, like the early noughties, of course, there was other sort of indie bands were coming through as well. You know, like the Killers, Kasabian, and so on and so on. But then I was starting to get like, you know, I was in the noughties. I had a few groups together, and I remember like one of them. It was supposedly, you know, we were trying to do grunge music. You know, I wanted to do grunge music because, you know, like I think it was the singer wanted to do like a grunge revival. But we were in these rehearsal studios, and of course, like the backline that you've got to make do with that. And at the time, I didn't have the gear I've got now. So I thought, well, I can't get that Seattle sound with this stuff. But what I can do is get like some of these sort of jazz voicings and stuff. So I started to like, sort of, you know, like mix sort of jazzy guitar things with indie and alt music, and then we started to find a direction. And of course, that particular lineup burnt out, but I did play in a few other groups, and then eventually they burnt out, and that's subject for another video. And then yeah, there was a lot of people were doing more solo stuff. You know, it's like you know, acoustic guitar, sort of singer-songwriter stuff. You know, things like sort of Phoebe off Friends, you know, like Smelly Cat. And yeah, there was lots of that sort of thing was going on. And then I was thinking, well, I'm an electric player, and I was, of course, you know, I was starting to, you know, like look into people like Al Di Meola and John McLaughlin and Paco, and I was getting more into like flamenco music and that side of things. So I was starting to listen to that, and then and then yeah, and then gradually that started to fizzle out a bit more. Um, but what I'm saying is that I may have started out like being fixated on like, you know, perhaps one or two players, but what I've found works more for me is not to be fixed on one or two players, but you know, it's, when you are when you do decide to immerse yourself in all of that lot, to try and approach it more like a research question about right, I want to look at a certain style. Okay, what style is that? And then, you know, then you look at it, and then you say, right, well, who plays in that style, or who has played in that style, and then you start to look into things like that, and then or more off the cuff, really. And this is something I really want. You know, it's one reason why I want to get back into playing in a group again. Is where you're actually in a group, and you just start playing. And then somebody jams on a riff, and you say, "Hey, that sounds like so and so." So then you run with it, and then you bring in influences which wouldn't normally go with that style, and what you will find in that way. But I think I've glossed over something slightly as well. I mean, I used to, you know, I was into telly, you know, like you know, I used to watch Buffy. That's when I was living in Birmingham, actually. I used to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but there was the sister program to that called Dawson's Creek, and there's a few episodes of that where I think there's one of the girls, she goes to university, and she's into a, I forget the details of the particular episode because it's a few years since I've seen this, but she's interested in like one author, and she wants to study literature because of that one author. And this lecturer is saying, well, don't just be fixated on one author, because you're going to be oblivious to all the criticism, all the critique of that one author, and you're going to be blindsided by, you know, you're not going to be paying attention to all the other authors that are there, which have influenced that author, or which have come after, or which you might actually like better. So it's like I say, it's more, the point I'm at now is where I don't see myself fixated on a particular player. There will be influences coming through which are stronger than others, and you know, but that's because, you know, of the route that I've taken. That in the past, I perhaps have been maybe overly fixated on one or two players, and maybe I shouldn't have been. I don't know, but I'm just thinking, you know, the best route is just to be open, you know, have that open mind, and you know, and think about, you know, like, you know, think about like your own direction. You know, what is it you like about, you know, playing? I mean, you know, and I mean, I'm noticing this also a lot. You know, I'm just putting the guitar. You know, there's some people are just fixated on like, you know, like sweep picking. Well, so what? I mean, I was doing that 30 years ago. Come on. You know, I mean, it's passé. You know, I mean, it's like, it's one technique out of like all the other techniques that you've got. You know, so why just that one? You know, that's part of what I'm saying. You know, that if it doesn't fit with where you are, or where you want to take it, if you're more in, I mean, like, you know, I'm getting more into playing chords, and you know, I mean, I still play lead stuff as well, but I'm finding it's a lot more satisfying when I'm finding some you know, interesting sort of chord shapes and patterns, and rhythm playing as well, and you know, like I say, there's one reason why I want to get back into playing in a group is, you know, to get those dynamics going. You know, because this is one thing that a digital drummer won't give you, is that actual sense of interaction. you know. So that, you know, once you're starting to find people that you can work with in a group situation, you know, a decent drummer who you can, you know, who you can work closely with, and you know, and a good bass player. So you're closing that loop between the rhythm section and the lead, and doing what I call like lead rhythm playing, you know, like sort of Andy Summers type stuff, and so on. Rather than doing all like sort of all videos about, you know, shredding or just being stuck, you know, what I'm saying ultimately, I'm not knocking the shredding per se, but you know, just being stuck in one place, that's not gonna serve you in the long run as a musician. I think it's best to be open-minded, to you know, to listen to as many different styles as you can, be open to those, and just sort of just cherry pick little pieces here and there, rather than just being completely OCD about like one or two people. But you may disagree, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this one. And I hope that's been some use. Yeah. So yeah. Please comment below. You know, I want to find out what your opinions are on this. And I'll see you next time. Right. Thanks for watching.